very warm welcome. We are looking at General Awareness Class Assignment 4, and today we'll be discussing about banking awareness. Now, please remember, in most of your undergraduate entrances, you will be getting a question related to banking awareness. Banking awareness, as the word itself suggests, are you aware about the important aspects which are taking place in the banking sector? Are you cognizant? Are you ensuring that you are up to date with important organizations, with important concepts that are associated with the banking sector? Now, please remember, whenever we talk about a bank, the primary function of any bank is just to accept deposits and provide loans. That's the primary function. And the secondary function is to get profit out of it, right? There are certain things that you have to keep in mind, that there is a history of banking sector in India. You get questions based on that. For example, which is the first Swadeshi bank? Which is the first ever bank which was managed by Indians? What is the name of the Imperial Bank of India now? Certain taglines of certain important banks like the Punjab National Bank. What is the tagline of Punjab National Bank? The name you can bank upon. That's the tagline for Punjab National Bank. So these are the kind of questions that you usually get in banking awareness section. All right. So you need to know about the history of banks. You need to know about the history of the banking structure. You also need to be aware about. The important dates when they were there, especially some important dates that we'll be discussing. Then you need to know the taglines of certain banks. You need to know the bank of all banks. That's the RBI. That's extremely crucial. You also need to have some knowledge of the stock markets when you're talking about banking awareness. Okay, so stock markets, RBI, the history of Indian banking sector, taglines of certain banks. These are the four important things, and of course there'll be other few things that you need to retain in banking awareness. Over here, we'll cover the questions which are a part of your general awareness class assignment 4. So let's just quickly get started. Now, currency is also equally important, and it's a part of your entire banking awareness segment. Which of the following currency is the costliest? Now, many times we think that it's actually the British pound sterling, which is the costliest currency, or we think that the American dollar is the costliest currency, because many a times we are looking at the currency rates via dollar, American dollar. But let me just tell you, that's absolutely incorrect, because the world's most costliest currency is the Kuwaitian dinar. And over here, when you look at the options, then Bahraini dinar. Bahrain is an island country, right? Bahraini dinar is, from the options that are given to you, Bahraini dinar is the costliest currency. So it's not US dollar, it's not British pound sterling, it is actually Bahraini dinar over here. And the world's most costliest currency that you have is Kuwaitian dinar. Kuwait and Bahrain are important oil exporting countries, right? So they get a lot of money from there. And Bahrain is also famous for its pearl exports, right? So let's just quickly look at the answer. So many people, like I told you, we think it's either the British pound sterling, or we think that the American dollar is the most costliest currency. But please remember that it's not the correct answer. You've got the Kuwaitian dinar as the world's most costliest currency at the present, and of course followed by Bahrainian dinar. Then there's a currency of Oman, there's a currency of Jordan. Finally, you've got at the 5th spot as British pound sterling. These of course they fluctuate, but by and large the rankings do remain the same. Okay, do remember that. So the first one, like I told you, is Kuwaitian dinar. You need to know about the currency. So one Kuwaitian dinar is approximately 3.29 US dollars. That keeps on fluctuating. This keeps on fluctuating, but you need to remember, so Kuwait is a very small country and it has got enormous wealth, right? It has got oil exports, from which it's deriving a lot of money, and therefore you have got the Kuwaitian dinar to be one of the highest currencies in the world. Rather, it's the highest currency in the world. So do remember that. Okay. Of course, they've got a very stable petroleum-based economy, and they export oil-based products, right? And more than 80% of the country's revenue is coming from the oil industry only. And of course, they've got a very stable economy where they've got it's a tax-free country. Even the unemployment rates are very low. So these are some aspects that makes the Kuwaitian dinar to be very, very powerful. So Kuwaitian dinar is the world's most expensive currency. This is how a Kuwaitian dinar looks like. This is 20 Kuwaitian dinars. So it's the world's most expensive currency. Bahraini dinar or Bahrain dinar, this is also the second most valuable currency. So from the options that were given to you, Bahraini dinar was the correct answer. Many people, if they've not revised their concepts, they go ahead and mark US dollar or the British pound sterling. But please remember, those are not the correct answers. You need to be aware, you need to be having a proper idea of the currencies, which are the top few currencies in the entire world. That's important. Bahrain is an island state, like I told you, and it's just got a 1 million population capacity. And of course, it's having its income from black gold exports. The oil exports are also there, right? Then you've got the British pound sterling at the 5th spot. So British pound sterling is at the 5th spot. Many people think that it's actually the British pound sterling that's the strongest currency, but you need to remember that no, it's actually, so you've got the Kuwaitian dinar, you've got the Bahraini dinar, you have Oman, you've got Jordan, and then on the 5th spot you have the British pound sterling. Okay, so do remember this. Moving on to the next question, issuing of credit cards is a component of. Now, when you have to issue credit cards, right? When you have to issue credit cards, so issuing of credit cards is a component of. This is a component of retail banking, okay? This is a component of retail banking. When we talk about issuing of credit cards, this comes under the rubric of retail banking. So retail banking is the correct answer here. Retail banking is also called consumer banking. That means, for example, if today I want to buy a refrigerator, or if I want to buy an air conditioner, or if I want to buy a car, or if I want to buy a house, I will be taking loan for that, right? And if I want to take loan for smaller consumer based articles, I can always have a credit card handy. So therefore, whenever we talk about credit cards, they are a part of your retail banking system or the consumer banking system, right? So you need to remember that the common retail banking services are, of course, credit cards, auto loans, saving accounts, mortgages. These are all a part of your retail banking or consumer banking. The things that normal consumers would need, right? For example, if you want to probably go to another institution, you might just take, if it's expensive, you might take an education loan, right? So similarly, if there are things that you want to purchase, you will take consumer based loans or retail banking, right? You will depend upon that. So credit cards, when we talk about credit cards, issuing of credit cards is a component of retail banking or consumer banking. So what is a credit card? Credit card is basically a plastic card or plastic money. This is plastic money that you have, and you can actually make purchases using the card for a specified time period, right? You've got a grace period. You have to return back the money, right? So credit card doesn't mean that the bank is paying for you. Credit card only means that the bank is paying for you and you have to repay the bank after a grace period. If you don't pay within the stipulated time, then there will be interest charged, right? So as you can see over here on your screens also, that typically you've got this grace period of 30 to 45 days. Some exams have asked this question, that what is the grace period? Grace period is 30 to 45 days. That's your cycle. That's called your cycle, right? So if the used credit card is cleared on time, there's no interest that's charged. That means if you repay the amount within the grace period time, there's no interest that you have to pay. But if you do not pay at the correct time, then obviously you have to pay the interest, right? So you need to remember that retail banking is responsible for issuing of credit cards. Moving on to the next question, which of the following is not a type of check? Now, types of checks, they're also important. So do remember, this is an important question which comes many a times in your banking awareness unit. You've got the bearer check. We'll just discuss all of these. So bearer check, if I have an account in a bank and I am only issuing a check for myself, that's a bearer check, okay? So for example, if my name is, say, Nirja, and I probably am issuing a check, right? And I'm issuing the check from my bank account, that'll be a bearer check. An account payee check is when I want the check to be transferred to another person's bank account only bank account, right? Not it cannot be withdrawn for cash. Cancel check is a check where you literally cancel it, right? It's used for documentation processes. Running check is the correct answer. There's no running check, okay? There's no concept of running check. So which of the following is not a type of check? Running check becomes the correct answer. Let's look at the entire question in detail, because you do get these kind of questions and you need to be aware about them. So a check, what is a check? Check is basically a piece of paper that you have that is signed by the person who's got an account in the bank, requesting the bank to pay a certain sum of money. All right. And to whom you want to pay, that is also mentioned on the check, right? So this becomes important. Now, the types of checks that you have, you need to be aware about them. There's a bearer check. Bearer check. I told you the same case. For example, if you want to withdraw money from your own bank account, right? So just imagine if you have a bank account and you want to withdraw money for yourself, or you've gone to withdraw money yourself, right? And you're issuing a check. So you will create a bearer check. You can also write down self in a bearer check, right? There's an example over here that Ram has a savings account in HDFC Bank. He brought a check from his checkbook to the HDFC Bank branch where he has an account. So he can present the check to the bank and withdraw money. This is called the bearer check, right? So it's bearing the name of the person. So this is the bearer's check. Order check. Order checks are basically they are made for making payment to someone else. Say for example, if I for example, if my name is A and I have written a check for person B, right? So that is an order check. So person B can go to my bank and say that, hey, look, I want this much of money, and the person will get that amount. Why will that person get the amount? Because this is an order check. Right? For example, if Ram is having a savings account in HDFC and he wants to make a payment of 1 lakh rupees to Sham, so Ram can give Sham a check, and that'll be called an order check. So Sham can just go to the bank and get the check, right? Get the amount withdrawn. So that's the order check. So bearer check when Ram was taking the money himself. Order check when he's given an order to someone else, or he's given the amount to someone else. The other person having the check can also take out the money. Crossed check, where you make 2 lines. When you make 2 lines at the top of the check, at the top left side of the check, you're making these 2 lines. That's called a crossed check, right? I will show it to you in some time, an image also of a crossed check. And this means that you can only get the amount transferred to a bank account. You cannot make a cash payment if it's a crossed check, right? So you cannot withdraw money. If I probably have an order check, I can go to the bank and say I want cash for this check. But when in the case of a crossed check, I can't really do that, right? In case of a crossed check, I can't really do that. So I can't get any cash payments at all. So this is how a cross check looks like. If you can just see that towards the left hand side, there's a crossed check mark made. So that means Ankit Sharma can only get the amount transferred, 37,000 transferred to his account. He cannot take money. He cannot get cash in return of this crossed check. Okay. Account pay check. If there are any doubts in any of the parts, please do let us know. An account pay check is very similar to a crossed check. Okay. So you can also remember account payee is just like over here I was crossing the check. I can also write down account payee. I can also write down account pay, AC payee, PAYEE payee. Now when I do that, what's the difference then between a cross check and an account pay check? See, basically in a crossed check, I can still transfer the check. Okay, cross check can be they can be endorsed to other parties also. Okay, but when you talk about the account pay checks, they only have to be transferred to the account of the person, right, whose name I've mentioned on the check. Can you see the difference? For example, this check, which is a cross check, right? So I can endorse this check. Ankit Sharma can endorse this check and give it to some other person, right? But an account pay check will not be transferred. This has to go to Ankit Sharma's account only. Okay, so that's the subtle difference. That's a very thin difference between an account pay or when we talk about the crossed check. Okay, if there are doubts, please do remember to ask. Otherwise, you can also sit with your parents, discuss with them about all these things. They'll help you better because they keep on going to the banks and they're dealing with all these details. These are very simple facts. Okay, so do remember these. Then a stale check. A stale check, if the check has been, for example, if I've written the date on the check as 2nd April 2020, all right, so it is only valid for the next 3 months. That means the person has got the next 3 months. If the person is submitting the check that I've issued today, right, if I've issued the check today, and if the person is taking it out maybe say on 4th October 2020, it'll be a stale check because it's more than 3 months. It's been more than 3 months. So stale check, if a check is not presented to the bank within 3 months from the date of issue, okay, that is called a stale check. Post-dated check, when I probably, if today is 2nd April 2020, all right, and I probably say that okay, there is a lockdown going on, maybe my bank might not have that much amount, so I'm giving you a post-dated check because I might be getting money in my account by say the 17th of April 2020. So I give you a post-dated check for 17th April today on 2nd April 2020. So that's a post-dated check, right? So you're giving the withdrawal date to be a later date. All right. Similarly, you've got an antedated check. An antedated check is basically a check. So, for example, if you've got a date entered on the check which is prior to the current date, it is an ante. Ante root word means before. Ante root word means before. So it is a before dated check, right? So that is an antedated check. Antedated check. So I hope that's clear. So running check was the correct answer. There's no such concept as running check. You've got an account payee check. You've got a crossed check. You've got a bearer's check, right? Stale check. The other options were all correct, but running check was an incorrect option. Which of the following countries has not accepted euro as its main currency? Again, Brexit, European crisis, the entire euro controversy. These are also important topics and they've been making headlines, so they can also come in your entrances. Okay. Now, when you talk about, there are 3 important nations, all right, who have not accepted euro, as their main currency. And from the list that you have in front of you, United Kingdom is the correct answer here. Okay, that's how United Kingdom also had this entire controversial Brexit, that is British exit from the Euro nations, right? So what is this Euro nations that we are talking about? See, there is this entire concept of a composite European Union, right? And there are a total of 19 out of the 28 members of the European Union, right, who have accepted euro as their official currency. They have accepted the euro as their official currency. And these countries include Austria, Belgium, Cyprus, Finland, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy. You've got Malta, Netherlands, Portugal, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain. All these are very important countries which have accepted the euro as their common currency. Okay, there are certain people who are not a member of the European Union and they've also accepted euro as their currency, such as the Vatican City. You've got Kosovo, Andorra. All right, so these are also certain countries which are not a part of, they're non-EU members, they're not European Union members, but they've still accepted the currency. But when you talk about members who have not accepted the currency, United Kingdom, Denmark and Sweden, United Kingdom, Denmark and Sweden, they have not decided, they have not taken in the euro as a common currency, and they have decided to stick with their own legacy currencies, right? So you need to remember this. So of course, United Kingdom was the correct answer there. So this is something that you can remember. And there are currently 27 nations in the European Union because Britain, of course, has got the exit. So it's no more 28. And 8 countries are not in the Eurozone. So you can remember that Eurozone that's having the European currency. And Brexit is basically British exit from the European Union. There's been a lot of chaos. So earlier you had David Cameron as the Prime Minister. He asked for a referendum, right, to remain in the European Union, and that did not really succeed, so he resigned. Theresa May came to power. She replaced Cameron. But that was again very futile. Why? Because now she's also been replaced. She's also resigned, and Boris Johnson currently is he was earlier the foreign minister. He has now been elected as a prime minister. So because of this Brexit controversy in very tough times, right, these leaders had actually come to power. So this is a very controversial topic of British exit. Now, what Britain does is that Britain always has referendums. All right, these are basically mass voting of people. People vote that whether they support a decision or not. Okay, so there are referendums. There's a Scotland referendum, which is very famous in Britain. Then there is, of course, a Brexit referendum, and that's created a lot of ruckus in the entire United Kingdom, in the United Kingdom country. So you need to remember. But currently, Boris Johnson is the leader there. All right, coming on to the next question, which is important. Which of the following bank was called the Imperial Bank of India? The Imperial Bank of India got renamed as the State Bank of India. And remember, we've already discussed that the State Bank of India has got the tagline, the banker to every Indian. Har Bharatiya ka bank, the banker to every Indian, is the tagline of State Bank of India. So when you talk about the Imperial Bank of India, so earlier State Bank of India was called the Imperial Bank of India. Earlier State Bank of India was called the Imperial Bank of India, and on the 1st of July 1955, the Imperial Bank of India became the State Bank of India. Okay, it became the State Bank of India, and so the previous name of the banker to every Indian was Imperial Bank of India. This Imperial Bank of India became State Bank of India after independence. It became State Bank of India after independence. So you can remember that Imperial Bank of India was there. So Imperial Bank of India was renamed as the State Bank of India. You can also remember certain important points over here. I would want you to remember these points. We shall be discussing it later also when we revise all the components, right, after completing all these class assignments. But nevertheless, I would want you to remember certain points, okay? The Bank of Hindustan was the first bank to be established in India. The Bank of Hindustan was the first ever bank established in India in 1770. Then, of course, you need to remember 2 or 3 other points. The first bank which was managed completely by Indians, managed completely by Indians, was the Punjab National Bank. But the first bank which was managed as well as controlled as well as owned by Indians was the Central Bank of India. And because not only was it managed but also owned and controlled by Indians, right, therefore the Central Bank of India is called the first Swadeshi Bank. So do remember these questions also. These are a part of history of banking. Okay, so you need to remember that when we talk about the State Bank of India, the banker to every Indian, the tagline of State Bank of India, this was earlier called the Imperial Bank of India. The second point that you need to remember, that the first bank in India, it was actually in Lahore, now the current Pakistan. So the first bank in India which was managed completely by Indians was the Punjab National Bank. And the first bank in India which was managed as well as owned and organized, controlled properly by Indians, was the Central Bank of India, and therefore it's called the first Swadeshi Bank, or the first truly Swadeshi Bank. So these 3 pointers, please remember. And the first governor of Reserve Bank of India was Osborne Smith, and the first Indian governor of the RBI was C.D. Deshmukh. These questions will of course discuss, but they are important because they come directly in your entrances and you need to be aware about them. Okay, and also remember that the Imperial Bank of India was renamed as State Bank of India in 1955. All right, so you can remember all these pointers. We'll of course be discussing that. Bank of Baroda has a maximum number of overseas branches. ICICI was the first bank to provide mobile ATM services, right? And Central Bank of India was the first public bank to introduce credit cards. It was the first public bank to introduce credit cards, okay? So these are all important questions on your screens that you see, and we'll of course be discussing them later as well. But do keep these questions in your head. They are directly asked in your entrances. Which of the following is a function of the Reserve Bank of India? Now, please remember, issue of banknotes, it is a banker to the government of India, it is the custodian of cash reserves of bank. That's absolutely correct. All the three are the functions of the Reserve Bank of India. When you talk about the Reserve Bank of India, it's a banker to the Indian government, it's a bank of the Indian government, it's also a bank for all the other banks, it's a custodian of all the other banks, it's the it's also responsible for issuing notes. As you can even see on your notes, there's this entire phrase written, issued by RBI. It is the lender of last resort for almost all the commercial banks. So you need to remember that the correct answer is all three of them. All three of them are the functions of the Reserve Bank of India. Let's look at some functions of the RBI. So the Reserve Bank of India, which is also called the banker to the government of India. So it's a banker to the government of India and all Indian banks, right? So it's literally the boss of all banks in India. So when you talk about the Reserve Bank of India, the Reserve Bank of India is the boss of all banks literally in India, right? Now, what are the few functions that are performed by the Reserve Bank of India? The first most important function of the Reserve Bank of India is it has to issue bank notes, right? It has to issue currency notes. Now, please remember, there's a question which is asked, which is the only note which is not issued by the RBI, okay? Now, which is the only note which is not issued by the RBI? It is the 1 rupee note, right? The 1 rupee notes are issued by the Ministry of Finance, okay? So this is something that you need to remember. The RBI is having complete rights to issue currency notes except 1 rupee notes, which are issued by the Ministry of Finance. Please remember this. Currency notes are issued by the Reserve Bank of India, and this ensures what this results in. People have faith also in paper currency. It gets a lot of uniformity. It's very easy to supervise. These are the three important things that you need to remember. It is a banker to the government, okay? It's managing the entire government account. It is maintaining how the government is operating. It's collecting funds. It's also making payments on behalf of the government. And the RBI is representing the government of India at the international platforms like the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. So it's RBI which represents the government of India. It's a custodian of cash reserves of commercial banks. Please remember that, okay? So when you talk about commercial banks have to pay a percentage to the RBI. So it's also the custodian of cash reserves of commercial banks, okay? So you need to remember that. That's important. So it's a custodian for all the commercial banks also. We'll be also looking at these important bodies again, but do keep all these things in mind. They're extremely crucial. It's a lender of last resort. So, for example, in the case of Yes Bank also, we saw very recently, the commercial banks are always there. They can always approach the Reserve Bank of India if they're having financial difficulties. And of course, RBI comes to their rescue at a high rate of interest, but nevertheless, it always comes to their rescue. So Bankers Bank, it is a banker for the government. It's regulating financial system. It's also issuing your currency notes, right? It's detecting fake currency. It's a banker to the government. So all these are some important functions of the RBI that you can see. Okay. Who among the following is the 25th RBI Governor? A very important question, which is many a time seen in most of your entrances. You need to remember that the 23rd, now just look at it because these are all important questions. The 23rd RBI Governor has by far been the most popular governor, and he was Raghuram Rajan. Raghuram Rajan has written the book Fault Lines. Fault Lines was a beautiful book because it predicted. Raghuram Rajan became very popular because in 2005 only he had said that the way the economies are going in 2008 or around that time, you will definitely have a recession period. And that is what happened, right? So you need to remember that the 23rd RBI Governor, Raghuram Rajan, he had already predicted the recession of 2008, and he's written the famous book Fault Lines, which is asked many times in your entrances, okay? The second thing that you need to remember, so 23rd RBI Governor is Raghuram Rajan, so that gets eliminated, right? The 24th 24th RBI governor, again very important, is Urjit Patel. And then when we talk about the 25th RBI governor, that's a governor at present, is your Shakti Kanta Das. So your Shakti Kanta Das, that's option number 3, is the correct answer here. He's the 25th RBI governor. He's the 25th RBI governor. So please remember this. He's from St. Stephen's College. So you can remember. And please remember Sir Osborne Smith. Sir Osborne Smith was the first ever governor of the Reserve Bank of India. He was the first ever governor of the Reserve Bank of India. Right. Then you need to remember that C.D. Deshmukh. C.D. Deshmukh was the first Indian governor of the Reserve Bank of India. Right. He was the first Indian governor of the Reserve Bank of India. He saw the entire partition process also, and how finances were distributed during partition. All those things happened under him. So you need to remember this about C.D. Deshmukh. So the first governor is Osborne, right? So please remember, these are important points. But the first ever Indian governor is C.D. Deshmukh, okay, of RBI. Like I told you, Urjit Patel was your 24th governor of the Reserve Bank of India, right? And you have currently, when you talk about, I think we've missed one of them anyway, and the current one that you have is your Shakti Kanta Das. Shakti Kanta Das is the 25th governor of the Reserve Bank of India, right? So he's currently the Reserve Bank of India governor. That's your Shakti Kanta Das. He's a retired IS officer, and he's also from St. Stephen's College. Which of the following is the tagline of Punjab National Bank? The name you can bank upon. The name you can bank upon is the tagline of Punjab National Bank, which was the first ever Indian bank to be managed completely by Indians, right? First bank to be managed completely by Indians was Punjab National Bank. First bank which was managed as well as controlled as well as owned by Indians was the Central Bank of India. Therefore, Central Bank of India is called the first truly Swadeshi bank. Okay, do remember this. So the name you can bank upon is Punjab National Bank. Punjab National Bank, the name you can bank upon, that's the tagline that you can remember. So this is basically it is the second largest public sector bank in India. So do remember that. Which of the following terms are not used in the stock market? Now, MSF is the term that's not used as a technical term in stock markets. Markets are considered to be bullish. That means they are rising, bull, like a bull, okay? There's a word in English called ebullient, E-B-U-L-L-I-E-N-T. Ebullient means you're very enthusiastic, you're very optimistic, you speak a lot. So from there also you can remember the word. So bull is always having, bull's always optimistic, right? And bearish market is when the markets are very slow. So currently, because of coronavirus, it's a bearish market, right? And you also have the term long stocks. Long stocks are when I want to invest for a long-term purpose. I'm not a broker who's just looking for instant profit, but I'm investing long-term. Just like, you know, the shares of, you must have heard that someone who had equity or in Facebook is now, like, you know, almost a millionaire or a billionaire. So those are the kind of stories where they're looking at long stock investments. Okay, so MSF is the correct answer. So stock market is a place where people who want to literally help the companies give the money, they're giving the money, they're investing the money, and they're doing this in exchange of your stocks as well as bonds which are there. So that's a stock market that's coming into picture. Of course, we need to remember that in India we have the Bombay Stock Exchange, the BSE, and the National Stock Exchange, which are very famous and important platforms for stock trading. Now here, when you talk about the technical term, you've got terms like agent, who's buying and selling shares. Shares are basically a part of the company, right? Broker, who's purchasing shares. Bear market is a place where the market is falling. It's in a bad shape. And bull market, where the market is positive. All right, blue chip stock is of companies which are well established, like, you know, Tata's, Reliance. They're all blue chip stocks. That means these are stocks of the companies which are already very prestigious. They're already financially stable. Which of the following is India's oldest stock exchange? Now, very important question. People always get this wrong because we think, oh, it's a national stock exchange because it's very popular. The National Stock Exchange is as recent as 1992. It was set up and it started working even later. So you need to remember that. The correct answer here is the Bombay Stock Exchange. It's not the National Stock Exchange, but the Bombay Stock Exchange. The Bombay Stock Exchange was set up in 1875. 1875. The Madras Stock Exchange was in 1937. The Calcutta, it was earlier not called Kolkata Stock Exchange, but Calcutta Stock Exchange. That was in 1908. So you need to remember that the Bombay Stock Exchange is the correct answer. So the BSE was established, like I told you, in 1975. It is Asia's first and fastest stock exchange in the world. Okay, it actually works at the speed of 6 microseconds, which is amazing. And this has been working for over 141 years. So you can remember that. And the vision of Bombay Stock Exchange is to emerge as a premier Indian stock exchange with best-in-class global practice in technology, products, innovation, and customer services. The National Stock Exchange, that's the NSE. Like I told you, NSE was set up in 1992 and it began its operations in 1994. Okay, so it was really late. And this is a national stock exchange, again located in Mumbai. You got the Calcutta Stock Exchange. This is the second oldest stock exchange in South Asia. And I told you that it was set up in 1908. Which among the following committees suggested to establish Insurance Regulatory Authority of India? IRDA is an important institute. Insurance Regulatory Authority of India, you need to remember about it, right? When you talk about the Insurance Regulatory Authority in India, this is the custodian. This is basically a team responsible for looking at proper transparency measures when you're talking about the insurance sector. So the Insurance Regulatory Authority in India, this was set up on the suggestions of the Malhotra Committee. Okay, so it was set up on the suggestions of the Malhotra Committee. This is important, remember this. So on the basis of the Malhotra Committee's suggestions, in 1999 the IRDA was formed. IRDA is basically standing for, many times you get the full forms of IRDA. IRDA is standing for Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority. This is Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority, IRDA, and this is of course there to regulate. It's a regulating, controlling body which is regulating the insurance industry, and it was incorporated in April 2000. Now, when we talk about the IRDA, that's the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India. This is the apex. Apex, that's actually the topmost. It's the apex body which is responsible for regulating insurance sector. And you need to remember that its headquarters is in Hyderabad in Telangana, the current Telangana state. So it's an autonomous body, and this was based on the recommendations of R.N. Malhotra Committee. R.N. Malhotra Committee recommended the formation of the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India. The primary purpose is, of course, to protect the interest of the policy holders, and it's, of course, giving proper registration certificates to insurance companies, right? It's regulating the entire process. It's ensuring that the policy holders are not at all being duped. So there's a proper transparency that is maintained by the Insurance Regulatory Authority in India, which was formed on the recommendations of your Malhotra Committee. Who among the following is the current president of the World Bank? When you talk about, none of these is the correct answer, because the current president of the World Bank is David Malpass. David Malpass is the correct answer. David Malpass. David Malpass is he's the current president of the World Bank. See, the World Bank, because America is having a major share, so mostly the president is an American only, all right? So the World Bank's executive directors select David Malpass as the 13th president of the World Bank Group. He's got a term of 5 years, okay? So he's the 13th World Bank president. You can remember David R. Malpass. David R. Malpass. Select the correct match. Now this is important. Please remember the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange that you have. This is the Stock Exchange of United States of America. So NASDAQ is United States of America. Euronext is standing for European New Exchange Technology. European New Exchange Technology, And this is, of course, there you can connect it with France. France can be the correct answer. This is European Exchange Technology. It's got its headquarters in Paris. Then coming on to the next one, SSE, that's Shanghai Stock Exchange. So Shanghai Stock Exchange is for China. So you can match it with China, Shanghai Stock Exchange, SSE. And then you've got the National Stock Exchange or the Bombay Stock Exchange, that's India. Okay, so you need to remember, of course, the stock exchanges of all the countries which are important. We'll look at it later also in your revision, but do keep this in mind. So with this, there's a wrap on your banking awareness class assignment. Like I told you, the history of the banking sector is important. You need to remember about the Imperial Bank of India, the first bank managed by Indians, the first truly Swadesi bank. You need to know about the dates, what was the name later of the Imperial Bank, what are the taglines of the State Bank of India, Punjab National Bank, how it is the second largest public sector bank, right? You need to remember all these details. Of course, the taglines are important. Knowing about the Reserve Bank of India is important. Stock markets, they're important, and their terms, okay? So these are certain crucial things that you need to keep in your mind. If there are any doubts in banking awareness, please do let us know about checks, about types of deposits. All those are important questions also that we looked at, right? So with that, there's a wrap on this session. Thank you so much.